the voice of the people and don't want to be the voice for the people. Come down with it.
If integrity matters to you, then vote PVIM in your district and at large. Each vote cast brings us closer to turning the country over to a team who is ready to lead us to brighter days.
We put in country first. Progressive Virgin Islands movement. It's time for a change and the time is now. How we go? Progressive VI, let's move. Let's spread the good news. My team is solid like a rock. Take a look at what we've got. Best finance minister, the son of a great pastor, a well-rounded teacher, accompanied by a lawyer. Great structural engineers, giving out a listening air. Trust them with your future. You won't have to wonder. Let's come together and fix the problem. The PVI deserves it. We could achieve it. I love my PVIM. Let's come together and fix the problem. The PVI deserves it. We could achieve it. I love my PVIM. Whoa, 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 my PVIM. Yeah. Trust them, rock with them, believe in them, cherish them, trust them. Rock with them, I know they can fix the problem. Trust them, rock with them, believe in them, cherish them, trust them. Vote for them, I know they can fix the problem. Vote for integrity, accountability, good governance, hope and empowerment. Rodney is a proven builder that can bring us together. Advance the infrastructure, that is a true leader. Honesty and transparency is what we need. Trust them with your future. You won't have to wonder. PVIM. Let's come together and fix the problem. The PVI deserves it. We could achieve it. I love my PVIM. Let's come together and fix the problem. The PVI deserves it. We could achieve it. I love my PVIM. Whoa, 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 PVIM. Yeah. Trust them, rock with them, believe in them, cherish them, trust them. Rock with them, I know they can fix the problem. Trust them, rock with them, believe in them, cherish them, trust them. Vote for them, I know they can fix the problem. For the integrity of the people and the development of the Virgin Islands, vote Progressive Virgin Islands Movement.
It's time for some PVIM Drive.
Come down with it. This thing simple, solving the problem. One way to vote at PVIM. Money and the team go make things happen. You know we're stronger together. We got to try secure the future. We got one common goal. So let's go to the polls and vote Progressive. You think it easy when you're trying to look out for each other. You think it easy when you're getting screwed by time. Who you gonna trust with your money? Everybody thinking self. PVIM is for the country. Progression for all. Who you gonna trust to answer the call?
Hello, PVIM headquarters.
Don't waste your vote. Catch the wave. Vote progressive. Don't waste your vote. Catch the wave. Vote progressive. You know we stronger together. We got to try secure the future. We got one common goal. So let's go to the polls and vote progressive. Don't waste your vote. Catch the wave. Vote progressive. Don't waste your vote. Catch the wave. Vote progressive. How you want to be the voice of the people and don't want to be the voice for the people? Come down with it.
Woo! With all that drive, the PVIM will take the BVI places. Now, a word about the man who should be the next premier of these Virgin Islands.
Randy gets it done. And listen when me tell him. Randy is the man who'll take this country forward. Randy gets it done. And Progressive Virgin Islands movement is the party with the plan. And let me tell you who he is now. A man of action, not just talking. He'll build us up, he's not joking. Okay. A leader whose record is proven. PVIM is the real thing. He's the leader we need in these times. He's got a strong team right behind. What me say? With PVIM and Ronnie, you got a party of integrity, financial stability, yes, economic prosperity. We get it done. Expert ability. Ronnie and PVIM for this territory. Ronnie gets it done. And listen when me tell him. Ronnie is the man who'll take this country forward. Randy gets it done. And Progressive Virgin Islands movement is the party with the plan. Progressive Virgin Islands movement is the party with the plan. Say Ronnie and PVIM now is the party with the plan. You better believe he'll get it done. The party with the plan. Vote Ronnie Skelton.
This enjoyable moment is brought to you by the PVIM, the only option for a better BVI.
Virgin Islands, let's move. Progressive Virgin Islands, let's move. Right now you have the power to choose. Let's spread the good news. Virgin Islands, you know you got options. And you should know that PVIM is the top one. So if you really love these Virgin Islands, vote PVIM, everyone. Virgin Islands, you know you got options. And you should know that PVIM is the top one. So if you really love these Virgin Islands, vote PVIM, everyone. It's time to grow, it's time to build this nation. With those we trust, not them under investigation. Vote for integrity, accountability, and transparency. Hope and empowerment for you and me. You got a choice, use it. You got a voice, prove it. So let's keep on moving. So let's keep on moving. PVIM, say it again. For the best government, vote PVIM. Virgin Islands, you know you got options. And you should know that PVIM is the top one. So if you really love these Virgin Islands, vote PVIM, everyone. Virgin Islands, you know you got options. And you should know that PVIM is the top one. So if you really love these Virgin Islands, vote PVIM, everyone. Vote for a team who is solid like a rock. What do I mean? Take a look at what we've got. Experts in finance, tourism, entrepreneurs, and a pastor. Great public servants who can turn a new chapter. This is a team you can trust with your future. Led by a man who was the best finance minister. Ronnie Skelton is a proven builder who has a spirit that can bring us together. Virgin Islands, you know you got options. And you should know that PVIM is the
The Progressive Virgin Islands movement has the best assembled team of at-large candidates. Here's one now.
Listen, BVI, listen. They got a new at-large candidate. His name is Stacey Meta. Vote for him on election day. We voting for Stacey. We voting for Meta. We voting for integrity and the future of this country. A man with a vision. A man with passion. A man of action. He's a man on a mission. We voting Stacey. We voting for integrity. We voting Stacey. We voting for transparency. The Virgin Islands matter. The youths matter. The people matter. That's why we voting for Meta. You matter. I matter. We matter. That's why we voting for Meta. The man is a teacher. The man is a leader. The man is a fighter. That's why we voting for Meta. Vote for Stacey. Vote for Meta. Vote for love. The love of this country. We want accountability. We want transparency. We want integrity. Right here in the country. Vote Meta. Vote Stacey. Vote for love. The love of this country. Yeah, hear about accountable. A man so humble. A man of the people. Just shading the bubble. A vote for Stacey. A vote for Meta. Is a vote for love. A love of this country.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, listening audience, and those of you on the live wide web, probably listening from Movement, Virgin Islands, or whoever. Good evening, welcome, and great to have you all here this evening. You are listening to the Town Hall meeting. We are here with the Progressive Virgin Islands Movement, and here to answer your questions and your concerns as to why or what you desire for our beautiful British Virgin Islands. On my panel here this evening, I have my at-large candidates, Shayna Smith Archer, to my immediate right. Next to her is Stacey Mather, and across from her is Ingrid Moses Scatliff. So welcome having you three. Great to have you here this evening. And a special welcome to our very wide and large audience here this evening. Good to have you all here this evening. So just to get the ball rolling, I just want to ask a few quick questions from our at-large candidates. By the way, gentlemen, it has been said that we have the best at-large candidate gathering in the territory. And you're going to find out why tonight. So I'm going to start from my right to your left. And here's the question I have for you before we go on to our listening audience. And of course, let me just say, for those of you who are here, if you do not wish to come to the mic and ask a question, but you want the question answered, there is a pen and paper at the back. You can write the question on, and we will certainly be happy to answer that question, okay? Right, so here's the first question and I'll start with Shayna, and anyone can answer it from her. Given the current state of relations with the United Kingdom, how do you plan to approach diplomacy in the future? I'll ask it again. Given the current state of relations with the United Kingdom, how do you, Shayna, plan to approach diplomacy in the future?
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Yes, Paul. First off, let me say good evening to our audience and to our viewers online. Happy to be here. As Paul introduced me, I am Shayna Smith Archer, one of the Progressive Virgin Islands at-large candidates. And I would also, at this juncture, like to pause and give apologies for our leader of the movement, Ronnie W. Skelton. He is celebrating his anniversary today, so he will not be joining us tonight, and I think that's a very good reason. So we remember that. So in response to what you just asked, Paul, I think, when it comes to our foreign affairs and how we engage with whether it's the United Kingdom or any other country, we know that through our current arrangement that we have to, basically go through different diplomatic channels, as it were. But I think it's always important, just like we do as professionals and in project management, it's important to have good working relationships. We're not always going to agree on every single point, but it is important that we identify what the objective is and what is the common goal, and from there we can always establish a plan in terms of how we're going to proceed to accomplish whatever it is.
See, would you like to elaborate on that?
Good evening, everyone. Paul, what I would say to that is that I, as a citizen in the territory, I feel that we should educate our people more about the process of where we go from where we are right now. We have a constitution being suspended, hanging over our heads, and I think the majority of the young people in our territory and even some of our regular citizens are not aware of what that really means for us. I think first off, we should educate our public. We should see where we are right now, because what I am afraid of is that on the day of election, once PVIM is successful, we're going to find out things that we did not know were going on in our country and in terms of our relationship with the UK. I think we'll need to assess that within the first week of being elected, and thereafter chart a course that is a mutual one where we benefit and we're not behind asking for things to be done, but we are a bit more, not aggressive, but assertive in where we want our country to go.
Ingrid, would you like to elaborate on that?
Good evening, everyone, especially the residents of the 6th District. I am a product born, bred, lived most of my life in the 6th District. My parents are here. My mother lives right across the street. My father has property here. This is what I call home. So it's a privilege and a pleasure for the at-large team of the PVIM to be here to hear tonight from the residents of the 6th District what their issues are and how we can help address those issues when we are elected in the next general election on April 24th. In response to the question, over the last several years, and in particular, it's successive governments, we haven't done a very good job of informing and educating the populace on what that relationship with the United Kingdom means for us as a territory. Unfortunately, it has been used as a political football to our detriment, and now we're at a point where that relationship with the United Kingdom has been fractured severely to the point where, because of our actions collectively as a people, our constitution, we have an order actually in council to suspend our constitution. What that actually means for us is we have to do all that we can to ensure that that order isn't invoked. And the only thing that puts it into effect, because it's there, is just a notice in the Gazette. So we can actually wake up tomorrow morning and we can read a notice in the Gazette that says our constitution has been suspended. That means that the local government no longer operates. It's the United Kingdom through an administrator who will have the responsibility, care, and control of the territory of the Virgin Islands and everything that has to do with local government. What was done before, that will now be done with an administrator. The governor and a select group of people who will run the affairs of the territory. We cannot afford to let that happen. Or forefathers or ancestors, my parents, many residents, many citizens helped build this country to what it is. We have been able to thrive and live productive lives. We cannot allow that to happen. So the relationship with the United Kingdom, first and foremost, has to be restored. How do you do that? It's mutual respect. That's one of the first principles. We have to build back the trust to get that relationship back on a proper footing so that they can trust us, we can trust them. Because the relationship that we have is just like a parent and a child. You get a child, you get pregnant, that child is born, you nurture that child, and every parent's dream is for that child or their children to be self-sustaining individuals. They can take care of themselves. When they get families, they can take care of their families without being dependent on anybody. It's the same thing with our partnership with the United Kingdom, and that's what it's supposed to be, a modern day partnership where mutual respect is shared, we trust, and we can work towards a path of greater autonomy, and ultimately so that we ourselves as a people can be in control of all our affairs, all our responsibilities, all our decisions, and we have to be able to regulate ourselves. If we're doing wrong, then you need to hold us to account. We shouldn't have to allow people to come in to tell us what we're doing is wrong. We're supposed to know, just like your children. We know when they're doing wrong, you reprimand them. So we have to do that and be better stewards of ourselves as a territory. But the relationship has to, it's imperative on every single person here, not just for us because we're gone. It's for the generations to come. It's for our children, their children, and future generations that we get that relationship back on the footing that it needs to be on so that we can then better inform the populace of where we are, like Stacey said, what we need to be doing and what we need to be aspiring to as a people, because ultimately the conversations about self-determination and what that actually means to us as a people need to happen, because we're afraid of things we do not know. But once you are informed, then you are fully aware of what it means to you, how it will affect you, and you're better able to make an informed decision as to what course of action you need to actually take. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ingrid Moses Scatliff. Now we're going to, if you've noticed, there's a mic in the center of the room, so we shall invite persons from the 6th District who are here with us today, or anyone for that fact, if you're here, you may not be from the 6th, to come to the mic and ask a question. So in the interim, if we, okay, we have a gentleman coming forward. Go ahead, sir.
Good night.
Good night.
I have kind of a two-part question. And first, I would like you to tolerate me a little bit because I'm a newborn, and like how Ingrid reference children, I am now your child. I'm a recent belonger of the Virgin Islands as of March 8th, so that's my new birthday. But I've 36 years I've been listening and growing and being nurtured by this community, and I love the nation and I love the people. But then I have a tough question to ask about my district in Bargos Bay. Bargos Bay is a community that has a one road in and a one road out. And God forbid that there's something that happens out at the entrance, like maybe the garbage truck broke down, picking up the garbage, or maybe one of the containers offloading the goods malfunction and everyone is blocked in. Is there a plan with your administration to open up Bargos Bay like the other districts to have in and out roads as opposed to one in, one out? And part two question is a national question, and I'm glad that we have a panel of at-large representatives. Does your administration intend to investigate the reasons why the homes at Longbush aren't being taken? Is there some reason? Joe's Hill, correct, yes. Forgive me for saying Longbush. It's Longbush I grew up, so we call the whole area Longbush. I go to the pastures looking for the sheep and bring them back to the pen, so all that area for us is Longbush. So is there any intent on your administration to look into that, not to charge anyone with any issues, but to find out what were the mechanisms that caused it to not take traction in the community? Because I'm very much into construction. I've been doing it all my life since I landed here. And it's my food, it's my bread and butter, and it's what raised my kids. So I am into housing, and I'm an advocate for housing, and persons who know me know I'm about talking about doing affordable homes for first-time homeowners, and that's being referenced a lot by your panel and your representatives. So is that a part of your government intentions as well? That's my question for today.
Okay, so we'll take it in a two part. So panel, the first part says the Borges Bay Road, it's a one-way. It is a one-way. He'd like to know why it's a one-way and what do we plan to do? What is our solution for that?
Okay, so I will start with the first part of the question. So I can say without a shadow of a doubt, last week actually, we were here visiting the community and someone brought up the exact same question. And Honorable Skelton explained that there was a plan that was being worked on when he was in the House of Assembly at the time, and that it is something that we need to pick up because it is obviously going to concern the landowners where this road would need to go to be able to exit. I think it's along the road where you pass to go to Public Works. That apparently there have been conversations in the past. So again, as a matter of public safety, as you mentioned, that it's something that's important. So we've already flagged it as something that the community is concerned about, and we do have it as part of our roadmap in terms of, improving on our infrastructure, because that is something that is essential. We're sorry that it has taken so long because, as he mentioned, conversations have been had. He didn't recall exactly why it was stopped, but it is something now that, again, now that it's been brought to our attention twice, we will definitely make sure that it is something that we look into, and not just look into, but come up with a plan to execute and get it done.
Stacey or Ingrid, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Just to add that I recognize the concern of the gentleman who just spoke from a health and safety standpoint, because it's also a major risk. If emergency vehicles have to get into Barber's Way, you have a major problem. That could actually be between life and death, actually trying to get in there. So I've heard trainer, and I do think that Honorable Ronnie W. Skelton will ensure that negotiations take place to have proper access and alternate route to get in and out of Barber's Way, because it's unfortunate that you have communities that, and there are other communities that face the same challenge. Because God forbid a disaster happens, then you're literally trapped. So I do appreciate the concern raised, and I think we will endeavor to ensure that a solution is come in short order. Thank you.
Can I just, 1, 2, can I just switch the mics, because mine seems to be louder. Okay, so the second part of the question, and it's an affordable homes question from the same young man. So he says, does the administration plan to do anything about the Joes Hill homes project, and why haven't they not been, is there a reason why they have not been taken? So there's an affordable homes project there. What is the deal basically with these homes, and does the PVIM plan to do anything about these homes presently sitting there looking very pretty?
All right, I'll try and provide some information on that. I do not want to speculate as to why the homes have not been taken, because I think every person within our community has a desire to have a home. This is something that is innate in each individual. It is unfortunate that that project itself started out with good intentions. If you can remember the late Honorable Paul Watley, this was something he spoke about. I know that we have a member on our team who's actually sitting right next to you that should be able to expound even further on it. The representative, or the future representative for the 4th District, Ian Smith, was the Director of Social Security at the time when that was being discussed. What I can say to you is, I think as a community, the chairman, sorry, as a community, that project has not been realized in the manner in which we, because I was one of the applicants that initially applied for it many, many years ago, that is not what I as a person or as a future resident envisioned that it would look like. I've even had family members that have applied and they've been there to look at them, and they've not been satisfied with the terms that are being requested for it. So I can say this to you, affordable homes is definitely on the top list of the PVIM government. And if you look at our chairman himself, you can realize that within himself and his family, construction has been something that's been a big part of his life. If you look at Fish Bay, I think every Virgin Islander should have the desire to have a home, and the government does play a role that is very, very vital in ensuring that land and affordable housing does happen in the territory. So it's definitely something that will be examined. As to whether or not charges will be brought against persons and that kind of stuff, cannot speak to that unless an investigation is done. Okay?
come back to the mic, sir, please.
I'm not saying suggesting charges being brought to anyone. I'm just saying find out what were the mechanisms that led to failure or persons not appealing to the development.
I
so
stand-
that the mistakes aren't repeated.
I stand corrected. I apologize. At the end of the day, yes, accountability must be found for that project, and going forward, there must be a mechanism to ensure that the accountability and the transparency of future projects, because Social Security did invest in more plots across our territory.
Anyone else want to touch on the affordable homes, or are we okay there?
I think I would just add in terms of when persons hear us speak about empowerment of our people, that home ownership, land ownership is very important and near and dear to our hearts as Virgin Islanders. Because one of the things that there's a generation that isn't aware that after emancipation, our ancestors were able to work on and earn whatever little bit of money they had and bought up the plantations that were formerly their employers. And it is that how a lot of families have whole hillsides because they bought estates. So it is something for us that we feel it's very important to safeguard that legacy. And when we look across the region, we'll also notice that the amount of land that is owned by private citizens versus Crown land, it's completely different here. We have a very unique experience here in the Virgin Islands, and it is something that we have to also make sure that we have regulations that help facilitate these types of things in terms of, when we have to transfer land. I had a personal experience 3 times over, actually, in the last 5 years, where it can become very expensive when you're trying to divide, whether it's land or even homes, a family home. So those are some of the things that we have as part of our country agenda and what we would want to see, because we have to make sure that our people own the land and they own the businesses in the economy.
Thank you very much. I guess the cliche there is affordable homes. So we have a question that has come in, and Stacey, this one is for you first of all. We also have for Ingrid and for Shana. We'll start with Stacey, and it says here from the audience, as there is a former teacher currently in government but has not made a substantial impact in the area of education, how can citizens be assured that you, Stacey Major, will not continue the same trend if you are elected? Good question.
Can you repeat that for me, Paul? I want to make sure I'm hearing this correctly.
I will repeat the question. As there is a former teacher currently in government but has not made a substantial impact in the area of education. So this person hasn't made an impact in education. How can the citizens of the BVI be assured that you, Stacey Mather, will not continue with the same trend as the previous person in government if elected?
Okay, thank you for the question. First off, I cannot speak to another individual's reason for not accomplishing what it is they promised or set out to accomplish. I can only speak about myself. My track record in terms of education and youth development stands where I stand. 20 years of being involved in education, and if you combine that, 15 years of being involved with education, it's been a long time, but 30 years total in terms of education and youth development, I am very much goal-oriented. I am aware of the system, I'm aware of where young people want to be, where our teachers want to be, where our system needs to be, and I am going to ensure, if I am elected and I am allowed to assist with our education system, I can be held accountable for that.
So basically you're saying that you want to be held accountable?
I absolutely want to be held accountable, because the education of our young people is not something to be made a toy with. It is not something for us to stand and say, these are the reasons why things were not accomplished. It should be the reason why we're saying things have been accomplished in our country.
So we're on to Ingrid again. Thank you for that question. Ingrid Moses, as a legal professional with in-depth knowledge of this system, how do you intend to work with the governor and the Deputy Governor Group to alleviate the current backlog of cases? I love this question. I'll read it again. As a legal practitioner, she says professional, with in-depth knowledge of the system, how do you intend to work with the governor and the deputy governor group to alleviate the current backlog of cases? I want to know this too.
I think it's an excellent question, and it's a question that must concern every single citizen of this territory. We all know that justice delayed is justice denied. It astounds me, and I'm in the legal profession, I see it, that on a daily basis, we have a number of persons coming before the courts. Their matters are being adjourned, they're being delayed. You have persons on remand for years. Those are major human rights breaches. It is something that has to be fixed now. And that's why it's so important for us to put civics back in schools, because when civics is in the school system from kindergarten, you understand what your rights are as an individual and what you're entitled to and what you need to demand, then you are empowered. But to the direct answer, I remember at one point we had night court. Night court needs to be re-implemented because it is clear that there's a resourcing issue, and that resourcing issue has to be fixed, because the longer it goes, individuals are suffering. They're not getting justice. You're on remand, you're suspected of committing an offense, but we all know you're innocent until you're proven guilty. But by the time you wait till your matter is heard, the time that you may have spent may actually exceed the penalty for the offense that you have been suspected of committing. So it is something that is dear to my heart, because every single day, the breaches that continuously are committed against citizens by the government, it's heartbreaking, because we're talking about a number of persons, but especially a number of young persons coming before the courts, and that is not right. So resources has to be at the top of the list. The court needs to be properly staffed. We need to get magistrates and judges in, and you have to implement night court. So you have court during the day, you have multiple courts running, but you need an additional criminal court as well. You need an additional criminal high court, because there are so many matters to be disposed of. We can see over the last, let's say 5 years, that we have seen an increase in crimes, but you need to be able to dispense with that justice and ensure that persons get just true justice, and not that you're caught up in a system, and then when you're caught up in the system, the young men would attest, you can't get anything done. You can't get a job because it's hanging over your head. So it's something that we really need to address, and I know that the PVIM government would have that at the top of the list, so that we can work hand in hand with the Deputy Governor's Office and the Governor's Group to ensure that adequate resources are put in place to dispose of, because the longer it goes, it's only a matter of time before the government is going to be held liable and accountable for those breaches. So we have to deal with it now. Thank you.
Ingrid, don't give up the mic yet, but have some water while I just take a minute to, I really want to congratulate a large number of young people who are here this evening. And we've been hearing a lot about the young saying that they don't want to vote and what have you, but certainly that isn't the case in the six. So please put your hands together and really congratulate the youngsters for taking the time out and being here today. We thank you for coming and appreciate you taking the time being here. So here's a question, Ingrid, and this must have come from a young person, right? These people are sharp this evening. Here's the question. What are your intentions for the development of the 6th district, especially as somebody who is a daughter of the soil from the district?
We have a number of problems in the 6th district that need to be addressed. And before we came inside, I was actually on the basketball court speaking to a number of the young men, just hearing. I know what they are because I'm in this district every day, so I see. And they were telling me some of them. This community center needs to be utilized. We need programs for the young people. After school programs, we don't have anything. When you drive into Parcel, you see a lot of young men, but you have a conversation with them and you will find out they have a lot to say. So we need to get proper programs within the district, afternoon programs, apprenticeship programs, because they have skills, they have talent. You see them there sitting idly by, but they have a lot to say, and they have a lot that they can actually contribute to, but we need to take the time to listen and hear from them exactly what it is that you would like to see happening. They talk about cleaning up the district. They talked about maintaining.
Make the relationship with applicants and the Trade Department easier and also better?
That's an easy one, actually. I think it was Monday when we were in Anigada, Stacey, we were talking about this. Good. So in our conversations, one of the things that we were saying, and I was sharing, is about having, one, a very clear policy when it comes to the application for businesses. One of the complaints that we used to receive at the Chamber of Commerce was about, one applicant may be asked to provide one set of information, another one, another set of information. And, there's this disparity in it. So I think one of the key things, and just to also remind persons that the Trade Commission is set to come online this year. And that is basically going to take over the functions of a Trade Department as well as some others. So our hope is that the Trade Commission now will come and start to streamline a lot of the processes when it comes to what businesses are going to be required to do, whether it's new applications or renewals, and that there will be standard guidelines in terms of what is going to be required to business. Because, as business persons, it's very important, Paul, that we minimize the time spent on a lot of operational stuff that takes away from us being able to be effective in our business. So I think our role as government, and having been both in the public service as well as a business owner myself, that it's important that we understand the role of government is to regulate and to bring accountability to persons to make sure legitimate business is done, not to basically make it as hard as possible to even start up a business, So these are things when I was actively involved in the CCHA that we advocated for. So whether it was conversations with Trade Department, Labor Department, trying to help businesses navigate the system. So our goal in terms of PVIM is to have a more efficient public service that facilitates the business of the country, because that is what leads to economic growth.
Thank you very much. And here's your final question. Thank you very much for the clap there. One person really loved your question. They all did, but
They're
this one...
probably a business person.
Yes, it was a businessman, so he liked the answer. So the second question is, how would you tackle the Consumer Protection Act, a long overdue promise? You know, he or she goes on to say, especially if nepotism or close families associated, or close family associate relationships come into play. I read it again. How would you tackle the Consumer Protection Act, a long overdue promise, especially if nepotism or close family associate relationships come into play?
Okay, so going back to where I left off, the Trade Commission is the entity that is referenced in the Consumer Protection Act. So when the Consumer Protection Act was passed, the Trade Commission is not in place. So therefore, that is why it has sat. So that's the first thing, again, that needs to happen, that the Trade Commission is activated. The Chamber of Commerce and Hotel Association actually has a representative on that board. So we are aware that the board selection, as far as I know, the recommendations have been made. I don't know if Cabinet has approved, but once the board is in place, then essentially the machinery will be started up. So they are the ones that are going to be responsible for implementing and enforcing consumer protection once that's in place. So it is something, again, for us, we talked about affordable living. Consumer protection looks at price gouging, you know, where persons and businesses may be charging excessive prices and ensuring that there's balance in the market. It's different to price control, because I know that is something that a lot of persons are concerned about. But as a team, we've actually discussed that in terms of the advantages as well as the disadvantages of price control. Because if governments try to cap prices, you are essentially saying to the businesses, either sell at a loss or you're not going to sell those particular goods at all. So it would mean now that if these are basic goods that are necessary, government would then have to subsidize businesses. So it is catch-22 as it were, where we want to ensure, again, price gouging tends to happen during, let's say, disasters, Paul. So like after the hurricane, persons remembered the astronomical price of a generator, right? Because it became high demand. It wasn't a shortage of supply. It was just because it had a high demand, persons decided to capitalize on it. So those are the things where your consumer protection department now will go into play and, you know, issue notices. And if there are fines as part of that legislation, they will be the ones that go out and monitor those types of things.
I'm going to ask Stacey a quick question because he tends to answer these ones well. She's talking about price gouging, price control. After the hurricane, the rents, people's home rents, went up very, very high. What is the PVIM's view on that? And is that something that we can control? Can we put a cap on that? Or what is the situation on that?
Okay, Paul. So the Trade Commission, as far as I'm aware, would fall in line with things in terms of rent and thing, rents, leases, those kind of things. After Hurricane Irma, I think the country itself, obviously, we were dealing with rebuilding, and insurance companies started to go up. The rates started to go up, and that was a direct impact for some people. The rebuilding costs, the cost of additional insurance, and everything, and those costs would definitely push back down to the renter. When it comes to rent within the BVI, I think that's one of the things that nepotism actually starts to play out a lot in. Because what you'll find is that a lot of persons in the territory will be related to other people, and they may say, well, you know, I can't really do this. Or you may find elected officials and they have properties and they do not want to get involved into that in terms of control. Essentially for me, I think when it comes to rent, one has to set up a system that looks at when was your building built? When last has it been renovated? What have you changed in your building? What amenities have you added and those kind of things to try to say, well, you know, this is probably a possible cost you can have for rent. But again, these things need to be discussed with the general population, and decisions cannot be made in isolation. But it is something that needs to happen.
Ingrid, I saw you shaking your head. Would you like to elaborate on that, or are you happy with his answer? You could put a legal twist to it, maybe.
It was just to add, consumer price control is a massive, it's mega, meaning it covers a whole range of everything that has to do with the consumer. It's just not rent. It is products being sold beyond their shelf life. It's controlling insurance costs. It's actually controlling the price of goods and services being traded in your community, in our community. So it's just not one single thing. It's every single thing that you can think about. You go to the supermarket, you see one price here, you go to another supermarket. It could be any business, but you see in the same product being sold for a big difference in price.
Have we done a good job in regulating that so far with our present government?
Sorry?
Have we done a good job with our present government regulating these sort of prices? Because we see large
Well, no, because as Shana said, the legislation was passed, but the Trade Commission has not been set up. And I think I recently signed a newspaper, they're advertising for the chairman. So the Trade Commission board, the commission itself, has to be established because that will then be the entity that now governs and drives trade. Not just the trade department and what they do with trade licenses and so, but it's all the other services that consumers, we all consume. We pay rent, we shop, we buy clothes, we buy cars, we pay insurance. Those are the things that will now have to be regulated to ensure that not just price gouging, that the prices being, it's not that they're telling you how to price your products, but ensuring that the prices being priced on similar products are comparable. And that's what it boils down to. So once the commission is in place, I think they're going to have, and it's a massive exercise in terms of staffing and getting the proper resources to ensure that these facets of the area needs to be fully established and the populace informed of what they're doing and what can be done to ensure that we properly benefit from the expertise. Thank you.
Ingrid, I know you wanted to put a little...
Shana.
Thank you, Ingrid. Shane, I know you want to put an extra on this.
Yeah.
So how hard this job is?
Yes, I just wanted to also add that government has an important role to play in setting market value. Persons complain about sometimes the cost of certain things. So going back to rent, I think was your question. From a business standpoint, it is very expensive for small businesses to rent offices because when government agrees to rates that are above market price, it basically creates an effect where it lifts the cost. Again, if government is purchasing goods or services, and I say this firsthand from being a public officer, government had a different price to the public. So I think definitely as one of the priorities for us, and you've heard us say before, and I'll say it again, that our leader is one of the best finance ministers when it comes to watching the public purse. So we have to help with the regulation of prices by setting the example. We have to make sure that we're negotiating to get the best price for the people's money. Because again, it's not our money as a government. The money comes in through taxpayers and for selling different services, correct? So we have to make sure as a government that we're not feeding into that anymore and being very conscious of it because it has played a very significant role, I know, in commercial rentals because, again, small businesses are the ones that have been feeling that pinch where they're not going to rent to the small businessman if they know that government will take it for, 25, 30% more.
Just really quickly, and again, if you have another question, please just come to the podium so that we know if there's anyone else, or if you've written anything else down, please feel free to come to the podium, and we will. So if you do, just come, and we will take your question. So we have a lady coming. Good night.
My name is Adele Smith, and I have been listening to you, and I want to know what's the difference between you and your opponent, because almost everyone recognizes and knows that the issues in the community, the roads, the schools, the small businesses, there's the economics. So if you can tell me
Thank you for your question. I would say this to you, I am a voter still, and I also have to make a selection as to who I want to cast my vote for. So if you're listening to what we're saying, I'm also listening to the other candidates as well, because I have to discern as to who is the better person or team for me to choose. Now you may say to yourself, I'm sitting here and I just automatically vote for the people that are sitting here with me. But I also had a decision to make before I sat with them, whether or not they were aligned with my goals, whether or not I learned with what I want and where I want to see the country be in the next 10, 15, 20 years. For me, stepping into the political arena was a very difficult decision because as a quote-unquote politician, expectations are very low. People have been courted, people have been taken on the road, and there's not much to given to some of the politicians in the past. So your frustrations or your indifference in trying to select who you think is best, it's a gamble, and I respect that. The difference is that the person that I sit here at the table, they have been either very consistent. For example, Shayna, in her desire to help our country. She has not fallen back when she has not been successful, but has remained active and wanting to make things happen. Ingrid herself has been active in other areas in the private sector, and she's helped a lot of young people and families through her practice. She may not want me to say that, but she has done it. So her commitment for a better PVI has been something she's been doing. The sacrifice to step out into the public realm and say, here I am, judge me, and see if what I am saying I will be held accountable, is something that takes either great courage, or if you've been there before and you failed your people and come back to them asking them to give you a second chance, means that you do not respect the vote of the person that you're asking for. Where I sit, I have been working with young people for the majority of my life, and I have seen many of them grow and surpass my expectations, but I've also been disappointed in the way we've treated our young people, our education system, our seniors, and environment, and it has frustrated me, and I've decided that where I sit, I cannot actively make a difference, and I've decided I need to sit somewhere else. The decision of whether or not I sit somewhere else rests with voters like yourself. So what I can say to you is that I am as uncomfortable as you are sitting in the BVI now, and I want to sit in a BVI where I have more of a smile on my face.
Thank you very much. Do I get a clap for that? Oh, that was excellent. Ingrid Moses Catliff, you speak about a vision for our nation, hope and restoration. Please tell this lovely lady there in our audience from the 6th district, which is your district, what's the difference between the PVIM and the other parties and why vote for you?
Okay, I'm just going to add to what Shane and Stacy said. It wasn't an easy decision for any of us, but for me personally, to put myself up to serve. It took a lot of soul searching to come to this decision where I am. And because this election is unlike any other election ever, at least in my lifetime, and I think everyone's in this room, their lifetime as well. You have to make sure you choose people who love people and who love this territory. One. For me to sit back and not do anything, I couldn't do that because I have a wealth of experience. I've worked both in the private sector and the public sector. I see both sides. And making the decision to come with this team of all the leaders running for election now, our leader, Honorable Ronnie W. Skelton, is the leader for such a time as this. That is why I am here with this group of people. This group of people have a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience, both in the public and the private sector. They've served on boards, they've worked in the government, they've worked in private practice, and we all want to help. And hope I mean, there are 6 ideologies: transparency, accountability, integrity, but hope. I was feeling a sense of despair for the last few years, serious despair. And if I feel like that, I know a lot of people felt the same way. So for me, we have no choice but to do it. And I think the team that's here assembled, you look at their resume, Shayna talked about it. Look, ask us the questions, look us up, see what we've done, see what we bring to the table. It's just not lip service. I'll just give you one little example. Before I was an attorney, before I was the speaker, I was a banker. I was the head of operations in Barclays Bank. When I left the bank, there was a main branch in town, there was a branch in East End, there was a branch in Virgin Gorda. Full functioning branches every day, 5 days a week. We had 6 ATMs. One in East End, one in West End, one in Naniki, one in the branch in town, one over by Port Purcell. We were thinking of putting an ATM on Anigada and Just Van Dyke. Virgin Gorda had an ATM and a branch with about 8 employees who all lived on Virgin Gorda. Where are we now? So those are things, I love this territory. This territory has been good to me. It has been good to my parents. It has been good to all of the citizens, all of the residents who migrated here and helped build this place to what it is. And I was able to thrive. I came from nothing. Right over there in the city, it was a wooden house. It went from 1 room to 2 room to 4 room. I know what that is. I know what an outdoor toilet is. I live that. The young people don't, my daughter doesn't know what that is, but I lived it. But guess what? They instilled in me basic principles to work hard because they both work hard. The entire village raised me to be what I am today. This same village here, every single family looked out for me. My mother worked nights my entire school life. So you get good grades, you go to school, you learn your lesson. I was able to get a scholarship from the government so I could pursue my studies. So I want to give back because it's not about me. It's not even about my daughter now because she's almost gone. It's for her children, it's for your grandchildren, it's for great-grandchildren, it's for generations to come. I have an obligation. We ought to all have an obligation to leave this place better than we met it. And everyone on this team I know feels the very same way, which is why I am here, which is why we are here. It's for love. Because I don't have a choice. Because the alternative, I can't begin to contemplate what that means and what that is. I would cry, literally. Because my heart aches for where we are as a people and a territory. It's not about the money. It could never be about the money. It's about what we are going to leave for generations to come and ensure that they're able to thrive like we have been able to thrive. Like the first gentleman who spoke said he has his children here, that they're able to thrive and be successful. That's what this is. So do your research. I would admonish every single person, don't just do your research. Ask questions, ask us any questions, but it's for the love of people. And which is why I felt led and compelled. I didn't have a choice. And the minute I made that decision, I had an overwhelming sense of peace and calm. Because for years it was plaguing me. And the last 2 years, it became extremely stressful. I was going to the doctor every minute because just thinking about what was happening and seeing it and having a conversation and realizing I don't know what the BVI has come to, what we are leaving. We have a responsibility. So go out and vote. And this is the team I think is the best team. We have never had a PVIM government. This is our opportunity to have a PVIM government, a team of people who love this territory, who understand what's at stake. We have a farmer finance minister who's at the lead, who can navigate with his team through these uncharted waters, because it's uncharted waters. And it's going to get rough before it gets better. And if you're going to go through rough seas, to go to Anegada, you have to make sure that you have a good captain, because you will either be thrown from the vessel or you'll be sick like a dog. So we chose to be with this captain. And the crew are all competent, capable, willing, selfless individuals. Look at all of them, full of integrity, honest. And we are to be held to account. And we are going to be transparent with every single thing that we do. And you are to hold us to account. So I want everyone to go out and vote. Don't say you're not voting, because not voting is a vote. And it's a vote for the very thing that is causing all of this, the despair now. And it's highly likely that if you don't, the very thing that's causing the despair is likely to happen. I cannot contemplate the alternative. I honestly cannot. I can't see it. Because to see it, I would crumble, literally. Because I love this place. This is the only place I know as my home. This is what my parents have made their home. Next year will be 60 years since my father has been here. 60. In less than 11 months. So if that doesn't convince everybody that we need to work to build back this territory so that we leave what was left for us for generations to come, then I'm just encouraging everyone to just do that. I hope I have convinced Ms. Smith. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ingrid Moses. I think that was what we call a comprehensive answer. You wanted to have a quick rebuttal on that? Go ahead.
I just wanted to add something. I wanted to add something, and this is reality. There is one person on our team who is a first-termer, right? And this is fact. If you vote for the existing government and they return to office on April the 24th, when the morning of the 25th comes, they will automatically receive a pension for the rest of their lives. Which means that if you vote for them and they have a second term, they will collect a pension for the rest of their lives. So if you want to consider giving the Virgin Islands Party another vote, or another term, I should say, remember that they will be comfortable for the rest of their lives. If you are not comfortable now, how can you be comfortable with them for another 4 years? That's fact.
Thank you very much. So we are in the tyranny of the clock. So I'm going to read probably the last question. If you have a burning question, please come to the mic once this question has been answered, because we are now in the tyranny of the clock. But we'll certainly take another one if you have one. This question is as follows. It's a two-part question, but I'll read it and then maybe we can break it down. It says, there have been instances in which elected officials clearly do not have a good grasp on a particular subject matter, yet they give statements or sound bites to the media. And she has in brackets, perhaps formulated by a permanent secretary and passed on just to be read by a politician. How can we be sure that you would familiarize yourself with matters before making public admissions? Anyone would like to take on that? Want to read it again? Ingrid, you've made Ingrid cough.
What?
I'll read it again so you can...
So the question at the end is?
How can we be sure that you would truly familiarize yourself with matters before making public admissions, rather than going to your permanent secretary for answers?
All right, I think we'll answer this probably in two parts, because I think all of us here have experience in the public service and we understand the relationship between the minister and the permanent secretaries, right? So first off, there's an expectation that ministers are supposed to know their subject area, and that really it's a myth, right? It is important that they are knowledgeable in terms of what their responsibilities are and the area, but ministers are very heavily dependent on their permanent secretaries and heads of department when it comes to technical advice. That is what the public service is there for. And, you know, on another occasion, we'll explain why we feel that it is very important you have a well-functioning public service to be able to successfully govern your country. Because one hand cannot clap. And the cabinet and the public service have to be working in tandem to be able to get the goals accomplished. For me as a professional now, I'll speak to it from the standpoint where, as a professional, I think it's important that when you do speak on anything, that you know what you're speaking about from an intelligent level, and you're able to respond to any questions, or that you can explain to somebody. So, you know, the team will tell you, I'm always speaking in engineer analogies, but I have to always remind myself that they are not engineers, so I would break things down. So it's something for us, and I think as a team, even when we interact with each other, we're always